Good morning. Will all former and retiring members of Congress come to order? Thank you. At this time, I would like to call on the Reverend Kibben, the House Chaplain, to lead us in the morning prayer. Reverend Kibben.
Would you pray with me? Lord, you have been our dwelling place throughout all generations. Before the mountains were born or you brought forth the whole world from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. And so we pause in this place to acknowledge your hand in the governing of our nation. We give thanks to you that from generation to generation and Congress to Congress, you have called men and women to serve in this house, upholding the values of freedom and liberty on which our country was founded. We honor their continued defense of the rights and welfare of the people and communities who make up these United States. Call us then this day and every day, in office or out, to acknowledge the higher calling to which you call each of us, wherever you call each of us to be. May we ever live as agents of your love, instruments of your peace, and advocates of the hope you set before us. We pray this in your most holy name. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Kibben. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I will now ask the clerk to call the roll of all former and retiring members. Please be seated.
Mr. Altmaier? Mr. Altmaier is present. Mr. Bartlett? Ms. Bordeaux? Ms. Bordeaux is present. Mr. Capuano? Mr. Capuano is present. Mr. Shabbat? Mr. Clay? Mr. Cook? Present. Mr. Cook is present. Mr. Davis of Tennessee? Mr. Davis of Virginia? Here. Mr. Davis of Virginia is present. Ms. Edwards? Ms. Edwards is present. Mr. Faso? Mr. Graves of Georgia? Mr. Graves of Georgia is present. Ms. Harmon? Ms. Harmon is present. Mr. Holt? Mr. Holt is present. Mr. Hutchison? Mr. Hutchison is present. Mr. McEwen? Ms. Morella? Ms. Morella is present. Mr. Nolan? Mr. Nolan is present. Mr. Paulson? Mr. Paulson is present. Mr. L.F. Payne of Virginia? Mr. Payne of Virginia is present. Mr. Petri? Mr. Petri is present. Mr. Quinn? Mr. Ritter? Ms. Ross Lettinen? Ms. Ross Lettinen is present. Mr. Ross of Florida?
Present.
Mr. Ross is present. Mr. Schrader? Mr. Schrader is present. Mr. Smith of Florida? Mr. Stearns? Mr. Stearns is present. Mr. Stupak? Mr. Stupak is present. Mr. Suozzi? Mr. Tanner? Mr. Upton? Mr. Walker? Mr. Walker is present. Mr. Weller? Mr. Weller is present. Mr. Perlmutter is present. And Ms. Stimmings is present. Mr. Glickman is present. Say it again. Mr. McMiller is present. Ms. Herrera Butler is present. Mr. Meehan is present.
All right, now how many do we have? Mr. Faso.
Mr. Faso is present.
29.
The chair announces that 29 former and retiring members have responded to their names. At this time, the chair calls on the Honorable L.F. Payne, President of the Association of the Former Members of Congress, to address the members.
Good morning, everybody, and Dennis, thank you very much, and thank you all. It's just a real honor to be here in the House, on the floor, and especially with many of my former colleagues and members who are retiring from the Congress, and thank you all. On behalf of the U.S. Association of Former Members of Congress, which we'll call FMC, as I move through this, I very much appreciate the Speaker's invitation to return to this very important place and to present the Congress FMC's annual report, which this year we are presenting specifically under the theme Life After Congress for our new former members who are not returning for the 118th Congress, and we'll share with them how they can continue their public service through work with FMC. I will be joined by some of my colleagues to report on a few of FMC's premier programs. And as I prepared for today's report, it brought back a lot of memories, many happy memories of my decade serving in the U.S. Congress. And I think for all of us, the Congress is one of the highlights of our professional lives. And I know that for each and every one of us, there are memories that will ever remind us of the great privilege that we had as representatives of our constituents. And for me, these memories include great friendships with colleagues from both sides of the aisle, working with terrific and very talented young people who were on my staff and others, and pushing forward pieces of legislation that I know have made a positive difference in the lives of Americans. By serving in Congress, we were given the opportunity to serve our country and its citizens, and I'm very proud that through FMC we can continue in an important way. The public service that has brought us to Congress in the first place, and there is indeed life after Congress. And today we will share with you how FMC members continue to give back. FMC is the premier NGO focused on our legislative branch, involving both current and former members from the House and Senate in our work. We are dedicated to strengthening representative democracy at home and abroad. We strive to encourage public service in the next generation, and we support and promote Congress as an institution and current members in their important work. The U.S. Association of Former Members of Congress was created over 50 years ago, and it was a social organization akin to a university's alumni association. And while we retain that mandate, we have also over the years added many substantive programs that make a great use of the unique skill set and experience inherent in our membership. Some of these programs we will explain in some detail over the next hour. And as you learn more about FMC, please keep one fact in mind. We are 100% a bipartisan organization. Our strength lies in the fact that Republicans and Democrats work together for the good of our organization and our country and are united as they continue their public service. It is within that spirit that I now invite your colleagues Derek Kilmer of Washington State and William Timmons of South Carolina, who lead the House Select Committee on Modernization of Congress. And they will tell you how, as former members, you can support the momentum that the bipartisan committee has created through their 200 recommendations to help improve the Congress. So, Mr. Timmons. And Mr. Kilmer.
Let the chairman go first.
All right, we've gotten used to singing duets together. It's good to be with you. Thanks to each of you for your service. I'm Derek Kilmer. I represent the west coast of Washington State, a little north of Jamie. So about every 20 or 30 years or so, Congress realizes things aren't working the way they ought to, and they create a committee to look at potential reforms. And the Select Committee on the Modernization of Congress is the most recent iteration of that. The title of the committee makes it sound like we're the IT help desk, but we've been nicknamed the Fix Congress Committee, which usually either causes people to giggle or offer to pray for us. And pretty under the radar for the last 4 years, our committee's been focused on a single mission, which is make Congress work better for the American people. I served as chair. Tom Graves was the vice chair in the last Congress, and William Timmons in this Congress. And it has been a truly bipartisan effort. I say that in part because the rule that established our committee set it up with 6 Democrats and 6 Republicans, and a requirement that 2/3 vote was required to pass any recommendations. As of last month, our committee very quietly passed more than 200 recommendations, all focused on making Congress work better. Some of them are on pretty wonky things, issues like how do we make sure that Congress is a more modern institution that uses technology better. Congress has been described as an 18th century institution using 20th century technology to solve 21st century problems. That's pretty apt, and so some of our recommendations have been focused in that regard. A lot of our recommendations, despite the fact that it wasn't one of our assignments, have been geared towards trying to make this place a place where there's more civility and more collaboration. Our committee brought in management consultants and organizational psychologists, and we thought about consulting an exorcist to figure out how do you make this a place that functions better. And we made about a dozen recommendations in that regard, everything from having committees do bipartisan planning retreats to having the institution do a bipartisan retreat to changing how orientation is done so it's not so segregated by party. I think every one of you former members will acknowledge that part of the success of the institution depends on staff, on having talented people who work in this institution. And unfortunately, because this place hasn't sufficiently invested in our staff, we see a massive turnover. And so a number of our recommendations were geared toward having this be a place that can recruit and retain and have more diverse staff. I want to thank the FMC for being partners in this undertaking. We've had some of you testify at hearings. We've had your sort of subcommittees geared towards the same topics that we were interested in. And if I can go from the rearview mirror into the windshield, we're not done. About 2/3 of our recommendations have either been implemented or are on the path to implementation. But we're going to have to kind of keep pushing the institution to make change. And each one of you, as stewards of the institution, I think have a role to play in that regard. On top of that, if in terms of the future of this work, our committee will go away. Having said that, it appears that there will be a select subcommittee on House Admin to focus on implementation of the recommendations. We also made a recommendation that it shouldn't take another 20 or 30 years before Congress takes up the subject of reform again. So one of our recommendations was every 3 or 4 Congresses or so, Congress ought to do a committee like this just to make sure that there's a constant focus on improving the institution. We've had extraordinary partnership, including some of your members and some of your new soon-to-be members. Ed Perlmutter as well have been just terrific partners in this undertaking. I'll just say one other thing and then I'll kick it over to William. Throughout the course of this work, I kept thinking about a comment made by former Secretary John Gardner. He talked about the importance of stewardship of an institution, and he said it was important for those who care about an institution to be loving critics of it. That would be a mistake to be an uncritical lover, because it denies an institution of the life-giving drive towards improvement. And it's important not to be an unloving critic that just treats the institution like the piñata at the party and bashes it with an eye towards destruction, not improvement. And I just want to thank the FMC and each of you, because I think the manner through which you have engaged our committee has very much been through that lens of being loving critics of this institution in which you served. And I just want to say thank you for that.
Good morning. I'm William Timmons. I represent Greenville and Spartanburg, South Carolina. I got elected to the 116th Congress. My campaign slogan when I ran for Congress was "Washington is broken." And to be the freshman member on the Select Committee for the Modernization of Congress was really a dream come true. I got to work with Tom Graves, my mentor, and Derek Kilmer, and I saw them do something that doesn't really happen up here much. They worked together. They were respectful of each other, and they really made that a priority for the committee. All the members got to know each other. We had a meeting at the very beginning. We talked about why we ran for Congress, what we wanted to change about this place, and we got to know each other on a personal level. And we acted in the manner that we thought that this place should work. And that leadership from Tom Graves and Derek Kilmer was so. It was inspirational for the committee, but I really it was rewarding for me professionally because we have worked hard to get things done. And we've passed 202 recommendations. I've done my best the last 2 years to fill Tom Graves' void on the committee. I always joke I'm the vice chair with no hair. He has the best hair of any member I've seen, so I always make that joke. I also want to thank the former members. It's my understanding that we wouldn't have been able to do this without your efforts. Obviously, inevitably, some of the recommendations we made would devolve some of the power from leadership into the members. We always talk about regular order, and I could imagine that many speakers would not be inclined to do that. But the efforts made by current members and former members to have this select committee was critical. And not only did we get a year, we then got another year, and then we got 2 more years. And we're not done. As the chairman said, we're going to continue working to implement the 202 recommendations we've made. And I am optimistic that we will have an even greater impact than we've already had. And so I just want to thank you all for your help to have the committee created to push our recommendations forward. I want to thank Tom Graves, my friend and mentor, for showing me how this place can work. And most importantly, Chair Kilmer, it has been incredible to work with you. Thank you for all your hard work. And last but not least, we have Derek Harley here. He's one of the staff directors. Yuri Beckelman is now a chief to a new freshman, so he's not here. But we couldn't do it without him. We were a team. And we got a lot done, and as the chairman said, we are not done yet. So we're going to continue to push the ball forward, and thank you for all your help and for having us here today. Thank you.
So, Chairman Kilmer, thank you very much, and Vice Chairman Timmons. You've done a tremendous job with your leadership on this very, very important initiative for the Congress and for the country. And we in New York in June had an opportunity to recognize both of them with their Distinguished Service Award. Thank you again. And what you just heard is really a prime example of how we at FMC can support Congress as an institution. And we're really very proud to be invited to do so. So at this junction, let me give you a little more background on FMC. As I said, we were incorporated over 50 years ago as a 501c3 nonprofit charitable and educational organization. We are chartered by Congress, but we receive absolutely no funds from Congress or the government. No taxpayer dollars are earmarked for any FMC program, and that's a fact and one that we're very proud of. Everything we do is self-funded through membership dues, through fundraising events, and through program-specific grants. And our most recent audit proclaimed us fiscally sound and financially healthy. One of our most immediate and most impactful ways you as returning members can support FMC financially is by considering to be a sustaining member of FMC. We now have more than 5 dozen, almost 6 dozen former members who've made this notable commitment to FMC, and they're ensuring that not only that we can present our important and numerous programs to the public, but they're also contributing to the longevity and continuity of this organization, as half of the sustaining membership contribution is earmarked for our long-term rainy day fund. And I'm pleased to add a list of our sustaining members to the record, and I want to thank them for their tremendous support of FMC. And thanks to Mr. Kilmer and Mr. Timmons, you've already gotten a flavor of how we in Congress, how we support the Congress as an institution. So I now yield the floor to FMC Board Member Tom Graves of Georgia, who will tell you about FMC's many different programs to keep us connected as former colleagues and to create media opportunities for our members to share their insight. And he'll be followed by FMC Board Member Donna Edwards of Maryland to tell you about our most important domestic undertaking, the Congress to Campus program. Tom?
I sort of like this side. Well, good morning, everyone. First, let me just say, for any member that's exiting that's considering former members of Congress, 8 a.m. is not a normal start time for any meeting. And that is safe for me to say, or I would not be affiliated. This is not comfortable for me either. But as I know, most of you former members know, and the members that are exiting, is that the former members of Congress is really a great organization. My first interface with it was walking through one morning early and seeing the group meeting here, and I believe Tom Price was speaking, and a few of the others that are in the crowd here today. And I was curious as to what the group was, and hung around for the reception, not knowing that one day I'd be speaking before you. As you know, there are only so many hours going to be in your day and the days ahead, and it's a challenge. When you lose your scheduler, you lose that critical staff, but yet there's so much you want to do. How do you manage that time, and how do you manage the resources? I found that the former members group here is really helpful in that. It's helpful in how I would say extending your public service, because you just never want to step away, but sometimes you do voluntarily and involuntarily, but you want to stay involved. And the former members organization has allowed me to continue my service in a different capacity, and which has been a joy. So for me, I've enjoyed the travel side of it, and I know many have been on Codell's and have enjoyed the travel through Codell's. There is that opportunity as well through the former members. For me, this past year, I was able to enjoy a trip to New York City, which, being from the South, is a new big place for me, and we had a great time as a group, as a board meeting and planning and discussing, but also exploring some of the city and some of the sites there. But then even more exciting was a trip that I enjoyed to Iceland. I never had the chance to visit Iceland. And this was a trip with former members, spouses, and guests, and it was not a trip paid for by the former members organization, so your dues, sustaining dues, didn't go to that. It was in fact a self-paid trip that was organized by the former members. And to have the opportunity to represent the United States at that stage was fascinating. We were able to meet with the president, a former speaker, and the newly, installed ambassador from the U.S. to Iceland. I mean, like newly as in that week she arrived, and we had the opportunity to visit with her at the embassy. So it was a great, great time. But as with all Codell's, in essence, you meet folks that you wouldn't have normally met. You spend time with folks you wouldn't normally spend time with. And so you as former members, you rekindle old relationships potentially, but then also you create new ones that you wouldn't have done otherwise. And for me, there was this special one. I refer to her as Miss Marjorie. Pat, you may have known Miss Marjorie Margolis from the Philadelphia suburbs. I believe mother-in-law to Chelsea Clinton. For some reason, we hit it off. We couldn't be further apart politically or geographically, and in a lot of different ways. And yet we had a little fun exchange in a webinar. I was participating in a webinar. The former members does Congress to Campus, and we were doing this webinar. And I kept referring to her as Miss Marjorie, Miss Marjorie, Miss Marjorie. I was being so kind and bipartisan, and she was being strong and very partisan, I felt like, And somewhere through that, she referred to me as the silver tongue from the South to the whole group. And I thought, I finally hit home with her. She has figured me out. But these trips are a great time to definitely meet folks and enjoy that opportunity. But also, there's that freedom and flexibility that I found comforting. Codell's were fantastic opportunities to explore and to meet folks, but you get a little bit more freedom, a little bit more flexibility in your planning, your timing, and such. So former members are great to be a part of. I would say on the trips, the other thing I learned is that you develop relationships with people who come from a different political background, from a different philosophy, but also from a historical background. And this was incredibly eye-opening to me, to interact with members who had served here just like we have, but had a historical lens that was very, very different, and to reconcile that with today or with the issues that I was dealing with, and to see that conveyed to others. So as I close, I'll close with this. Aside from trips, I had the chance to join in a panel discussion with one of our former colleagues, Ms. Edwards, who you'll hear from in a minute, and then also former Senator Hutchinson, who I hadn't met before. And we had a fun exchange and discussion about the elections and what to expect in the elections. You'll have those opportunities, and what's great about those opportunities is that you do learn about others, you do learn other perspectives, but more so it keeps you sharp, and that was one of my concerns leaving Congress, is how do you stay sharp? And so being ready, being able to state your opinion, being able to back it up, but also respect others, keeps you sharp. And we should stay sharp, because if you want to extend your public service, you need to be sharp. You need to be a sharp opinion leader, and you need to be a sharp communicator, because folks are going to be expecting to hear from you in the days ahead. So with that, Mr. Chair, I thank you for the opportunity to address LF. Thanks for the opportunity to be on the board, and I'm happy to yield to the young lady from Maryland, Ms. Edwards.
Good morning, and don't get distracted by the cane. It might fall. If I fall, catch me. Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for being here this morning with the former members of Congress. I am really grateful to be able to speak with you this morning about one of my favorite programs and FMC's biggest program, Congress to Campus. I love Congress to Campus. As some of you know, the Congress to Campus program brings bipartisan pairs of former members of Congress to college campuses for 1.5 to 3 days to meet with classes, student groups, clubs, local media, faculty, and other members of a college campus community to engage in frank, honest dialogues about our legislative branch in action, public service, and our democracy and the role that citizens play. We talk about current legislative issues and other topics dictated by the headlines. The way it works is a bipartisan team of former members shares real-life experiences in both political and public realms. They discuss their unique experiences balancing public and private lives, giving an unparalleled insight into the many roles of our elected representatives. In addition, the members focus on the real-world application of policymaking and illustrate how government policy influences the everyday lives of citizens. Students love it. Congress to Campus is an exceptional perspective about life in Washington and on Capitol Hill, especially when you have a little bit of distance. Currently, when there's a great deal of negativity surrounding Congress, the Congress to Campus program highlights the power of bipartisanship, the dignity of public service, and the importance of actively engaging its citizenry. Students get so much out of it, and the questions that they have really reflect the purpose of the Congress to Campus program. The 3 goals of Congress to Campus to showcase civil, respectful, productive debate on issues where former members still wear their partisan hats, and we do. For example, on environmental policy or on the Second Amendment. But they engage students in a back and forth very different from the shouting matches that students sometimes see on cable news and social media. I have to say I've engaged in that. Secondly, to encourage public service in the next generation, to show interested students a path toward Capitol Hill, and to mentor future public servants. To remind the students of their role as citizens. They need to be active participants in our representative democracy. Otherwise, our form of government just doesn't work, and students get to hear firsthand the importance of that, even when you share or have political differences. And at a minimum, these events showcase to students that they have a responsibility to be informed voters. And Congress to Campus also shares the many other ways that are being represented that can hold accountable those doing the representing. The former members of Congress donate all their time and insight pro bono to the program. This is a real value because otherwise, especially for small college campuses, it would be impossible for those campuses to be able to pay honorarium and travel and all of those things. And so none of the members of Congress participating in Congress to Campus receive a fee or honorarium for their time. FMC funding only goes toward covering travel and lodging costs. And Congress to Campus is made possible thanks to the support of the Stennis Center and a foundation on which I serve, the Park Foundation. This past spring, Congress to Campus went to 11 different college campuses, reaching nearly 1,000 students. This past fall, Congress to Campus held over 15 programs with schools and organizations alike, including one trip to the United Kingdom and one trip to Germany with our former members, reaching over 1,000 students. Most schools feel comfortable transitioning back to in-person program, but there are still many opportunities to hold these events virtually as well. And I think we learned a lot during the pandemic about ways that we could reach schools that we ordinarily otherwise would not be able to travel to. To quote one student from Western Oregon University, after attending a Congress to Campus visit, the student said, and I quote, "I always thought that Congress officials did get letters asking for change, but I always thought they ignored the changes people wanted. I learned they actually do care and will try to make the changes when someone petitions to them. I also learned I should not only look at one person's side I most agree with, and that rather I should look at issues from both perspectives." That was from a student at Western Oregon University. Looking ahead to the new year, the focus of Congress to Campus will slightly shift to reaching out to historically black colleges and universities, tribal colleges, and Hispanic-serving institutions, military academies, and also to colleges and inner-city colleges where students may never have the opportunity to speak with members of Congress like you. Currently, there are 12 schools already signed up for the spring of 2023, and so you will have your opportunity as well to sign up in bipartisan pairs. Don't miss your opportunity. So our ask of you is to be part of our flagship program, Congress to Campus. Help us help these students see that bipartisanship and civility are alive and thriving, especially at a divisive time like this. One big testament to the program is before and after program surveys, 100% of students on their post-event survey say their mind has changed about Congress for the better. I love Congress to Campus. In addition to the amazing students, one of my favorite aspects of the program is the opportunity to work with my colleagues from across the aisle, some of whom I did not know well or serve with, to change ideas and policy programs in a respectful way, and to show students that critical thinking and healthy disagreement are part of the beauty of the Republic. And I will say on a personal note, I really got to know Charles Bustani from Louisiana. We became fast and furious friends. My friend, the chair, Dennis Ross, and I have done a number of these programs together, and now we are RV companions. And so if you'd like to get involved, please contact the Congress to Campus Program Manager, Patricia Ox, and thanks so much for your time today.
So Tom and Donna, thank you very much for sharing your insight, and thank you for being such great members of FMC. FMC is a volunteer organization, and I think our programs have a lot of impact because our members on a bipartisan basis contribute to us and to the public their knowledge and time. And we're successful because former representatives and senators come together across party lines for the good of our organization. They do this on a pro bono basis, and they believe in our mission, and they continue to have a public servant's heart. Former members of Congress in 2021 and 2022 donated more than 7,000 hours of energy and wisdom and mentoring and expertise without receiving any compensation. The only compensation is the knowledge that they are giving back, that serving in Congress was a unique privilege, and that it comes with the mandate to encourage and empower the next generation. And on behalf of FMC, I want to thank all of our colleagues who have contributed their time and expertise to make FMC such a success. And so while I have all of you here, thank you all, and thank you to the many members of FMC who are not with us today as well. Let me also share with our new former members that through FMC you can contribute to civic education across the country. You can share with audiences worldwide your unparalleled insight through panels and webinars on issues from economic policy to security issues, and travel overseas as part of former member delegations at the invitation of our global partners. We also run a number of highly successful programs involving senior congressional staff, including chiefs of staff and district directors across the nation. And again, all of our work is accomplished because Democrats and Republicans band together as they continue their public service through FMC. One way our international program works, one way our international works manifests itself is through FMC's congressional study groups. These are programs that support the current Congress and the members of Congress by bringing them together with their peers in legislative branches overseas. These parliamentary exchanges focus currently on the German Bundestag, the Japanese Diet, the European Parliament in Brussels, and the Korean National Assembly. I now invite two of our board members to share with you their insight into international programming. Former Senator and House Member Tim Hutchinson, who will speak about our congressional study groups, and former member and former ambassador Connie Morella, has been a leader on FMC projects for a very long time, including our very important Diplomatic Advisory Council. Tim?
Thank you, LF. It's great to be back in the House. I'm glad you made passing reference to the Senate in one of those. So it's good to be on the House floor, where the motto in this institution is, I can always remember, the other party is the opposition and the Senate is the enemy. So I'm glad you include senators in the former members' organizations. It's my great pleasure to report on the work of the congressional study groups on Germany, Japan, Europe, and Korea, the flagship international program of the FMC. The study groups are independent, bipartisan legislative exchanges that engage current members of Congress and their senior staff and strive to create a better understanding and cooperation between the United States and our most important strategic and economic partners. Unique in their year-round bipartisan and non-advocacy outreach to Capitol Hill, the congressional study groups remain a premier forum for productive, candid, and topical dialogue on the issues most relevant to our friends and allies abroad. Featuring voices from Congress, the diplomatic community, administration officials, the private sector, and civil society, study group programming attracts a large and diverse group of policymakers who are committed to productive dialogue. Each study group has a bipartisan membership roster of between 75 and 125 members of Congress and is led by a bipartisan, bicameral pair of co-chairs. Our co-chairs are true leaders who not only serve in their role at official study group events, but are also called on by various embassies and outside organizations to speak on panels, attend roundtables, and meet with countless visiting delegations to the United States. So I want to take just a moment to acknowledge the service of our co-chairs for their dedication to these critical programs. The Congressional Study Group on Germany is led by Senator Tim Scott, Senator Jeanne Shaheen, Representative Brendan Boyle, and Representative August Pfluger. The Congressional Study Group on Japan is led by Senator Dan Sullivan, Senator Lisa Murkowski, Representative Diana DeJette, and Representative Larry Bucshon. The Congressional Study Group on Korea is led by Senator Brian Schatz, Senator Dan Sullivan, Representative Ami Bera, and Representative Young Kim. And the Congressional Study Group on Europe is led by Senator John Boozman of the great state of Arkansas, Senator Chris Murphy, Representative Bill Huizenga, and Representative Deborah Ross. So a few highlights from our program calendar in the last 12 months. They include things like an annual congressional member study tour to Japan, visiting both Tokyo and Kyoto. The annual congressional member study tour to Korea, visiting Seoul. The 37th annual Congress Bundestag seminar hosted by Representative Brendan Boyle in Pennsylvania. A senior congressional staff study tour to Dusseldorf and Cologne, Germany. 2 senior congressional staff study tours to Korea. 2 senior congressional staff study tours to Japan. And over 55 high-level exchanges and roundtables here in our nation's capital. So it's been a very full and very busy year for the congressional study groups. As former members of Congress, we're proud to bring the important services provided by the congressional study groups to our colleagues still in office and are proud to play an active role in our continued international outreach. Now, I think we hear from Connie. Congresswoman, Ambassador.
I don't have a hat on, so you can see me, can't you? I don't have to lower it. I want to thank you, Tim, and I want to say that what I'm going to be mentioning to you is going to be a long list of businesses and countries that have been affiliated with us. So it'll show you how extensive, how intensive, how expansive, how productive our groups are. The work of the congressional study groups is complemented by our Diplomatic Advisory Council, initially focused on European nations. The Diplomatic Advisory Council is now comprised of dozens of ambassadors from 5 continents who advise and participate in our programming. The interest and the commitment to multilateral dialogue is a valued addition to the congressional study groups, and it provides a valuable outreach beyond our 4 core study groups. Members of the Diplomatic Advisory Council in 2022 includes the Embassy of Argentina, Australia, Belgium, Canada, the European Union, Finland, France, Germany, Greece, Iceland, Ireland, Italy, Japan, the Republic of Korea, Liechtenstein, Monaco, the Netherlands, New Zealand, Norway, Portugal, Qatar, Romania, Singapore, Sweden, Switzerland, and the United Kingdom. Isn't that impressive? Incredible. I also want to thank those individuals, organizations, and business advisory corporate members whose patronage makes the work of the congressional study groups possible. In particular, I would like to recognize Dr. Sachiro Akamoto of the Sasakawa Peace Foundation, USA, Thomas Byrne of the Korea Society, Sung Won Bai of Korea Foundation, USA, Bailey Childers of the German Marshall Fund of the United States, Paige Cottingham Streeter of the Japan-U.S. Friendship Commission, and Julia Freelander of Atlantique Brück for their support as institutional funders of the congressional study groups in 2022. So you can see the support that we received. Companies who belong to the 2022 Business Advisory Councils are, and this is a long list, folks, are Aflac, Atlantis, All Nippon Airways, BASF, Bayer, B. Bryan Medical, Beam Sundry, Central Japan Railway Company, CJ America, Daimler, Deutsche Telekom, DHL, Fresensius SE, Hitachi, Honda, Hyundai, Itochu, GTI, Kita, Lockheed Martin, Lufthansa, German Airlines, Marubeni America Corporation, Mitsubishi Corporation, America, Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, America, Mitsui, Mitsuo, NEC, Nissan, Nomura, Panasonic, POSCO, representative of German Industry and Trade, Samsung, Sojitz, Subaru, Takeda Pharmaceuticals, Tellurian, Toyota Motor North America, United Parcel Service, Volkswagen Group of America. Wow, isn't that a long list? But just know, all of them have been very much involved with our Business Advisory Council, which says how expansive we are and connecting, how we've connected. Because of your financial support, our activities not only help to build vital bilateral relationships between legislatures, but also build bipartisan relationships within our own Congress. Mutual understanding and shared experiences among legislators are crucial to solving pressing problems, whether they're at home or abroad. I want to thank you, and if I mispronounce one of those names, just know they are there for us, and we're very appreciative of the support that they've given us. Thank you.
The chair now recognizes the Speaker of the House, the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Pelosi.
Thank you all. Good morning. Good morning, my friends. It's wonderful to be here with you. Thank you for the recognition. LF Payne, thank you for keeping this going and for your leadership. It was an honor to serve with you in the House. I think I served with all of you. And certainly Jane and Donna and Mr. Secretary, so many titles, so many titles. But to all of you, welcome back to the chamber. It's an interesting time, a busy time, and again, something that, Connie, it's something that binds us all together is the oath that we take to the Constitution of the United States. Regardless of party, regardless of the aisle, we're united in that oath to the Constitution. I thank you for so much that you are doing in terms of campus, college to campus, Congress to campus, and the beautiful ceremony you have each year honoring those who have gone on to heaven, I assume, having served in the Congress. But then we just lost a week and a half ago, Mr. McEachin, and I mentioned him because his recent departure, but also he said something very beautiful on his first speech on the floor of the House. He quoted Christ's first sermon. Imagine that, Christ's first sermon. And in the sermon, I'll read you this so you know I did not make this up. Mr. McEachin cited during his first one of the words of Jesus' first sermon, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me to bring good news to the poor." Imagine. And so, again, with all of us here, we offer hope in the face of hardship. Both sides offer voice to the voiceless, bring good news to those in need. Now, I thought I have some remarks here, but I thought I'd just tell you a couple stories. We lost Norman Netta this year, as you know, and some of us were together at his service. And Mr. Ambassador, Governor, former colleague, Jim Blanchard, I call him Jamie because one of his friends was my friend and always referred to him as Jamie. He spoke before I did, and he talked about how a number of members come together on a regular basis and discuss this, that, and the other thing, and they have all this guidance that they want to give us. And so when I got up, I said, I'm very familiar with that group. George Miller, Tom Downey, Marty Russo, that whole crew of that, you know who I'm talking about. And when they would call me with this guidance that they brought together, they would say, Madam Speaker, if you were smart, you would do thus and so. And I didn't take offense because I used to hear them say that to Tom Foley and others. I don't know why they thought that was a good introduction to their remark. I don't know. But in any event, it was, I think, sent in, I don't know, why would somebody say that to you? If you were smart, you would do it this way. But that's the wisdom of the former members. But when they were members, they said that as well. I thank you all for what you do to continue taking the experience of Congress into the community, the values of patriotism to our great country, what has unified us so much over time. Imagine the wisdom of our founders to found a country based on something unknown, undone before. Now, I see some members here who are going to be part of this organization. All of a sudden, I'm like, what? One of these days, I'll be joining you too. And so I look forward to that. But in the meantime, know that the foundation that each of you has put down when you were here is something that we continue to draw upon. It's very important to us, especially at a time when we worked in a much more bipartisan way. And that always has to be what we strive for, bipartisanship, accountability, and shedding light on what we do so that the people understand that their voices are heard. I hope that you always take pride in your service in Congress, no matter how raucous it may be here. We've seen some raucous times in our day going way back. But again, please understand that a source of strength and inspiration that you all continue to be to us here, and the fact that you come together, whether it's on this day or technologically and other ways, and don't hesitate to call us, even if it's not the speaker, but other members, to say if you were smart, you would do you would do thus and so. So it's my pleasure to, for the last time, to welcome you to this chamber as Speaker of the House. And again, when I see you again, I may be sitting on that side of this podium, so I'll look forward to that. But thank you all for your patriotism, for your love of this great country, greatest country that ever existed in the history of the world. Now, let me tell you what's happening today. Today, the President will be signing the Marriage Protection Act. That's a big deal for some of us. My first speech on this floor, I talked about HIV and AIDS 35 years ago. Last bill I signed, one of the last bills I signed as Speaker the first time, was the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. One of the last bills I signed this time to send over to the President that he will sign today, Protection of Marriage Act, in between the other things that related to the hate crimes and all of that. But the reason I mention it, because it was always an expansion of freedom in our country. And that's what we hope we always continue to do, ever increasing the freedom in our country. At the end of the day, I will welcome 50 heads of state from Africa. The President's having an African summit now, and he will be welcoming 50 heads of state at the White House, and then tonight they will come here. And I'm so proud that we can show them this temple of democracy, welcome them here, hear what they have to say, build a strong bond with them. But so many of you have been so much a part of everything that has happened here. I thank you for that, for ever expanding freedom in our country. Thank you so much. Lovely to be with you. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, thank you very much for visiting with us, and thank you especially for your great leadership of the Congress. Thank you. The speaker mentioned Don McEachin, my fellow Virginian, and she also mentioned Norm Mineta, both of whom have passed away recently. And I'd also like to say a few words about our good friend, Jim Colby. As many of you may know, Jim passed away about a week ago. It was quite sudden and quite unexpected. And with his passing, we at FMC have lost a good friend and a longtime board member and a voice of reason and compassion during these tumultuous political times that we are currently experiencing. So all of us at FMC, from the staff to the board, had loved working with Jim, and we will certainly miss him greatly. And as you may know, and many of you have participated in this service, we each year organize a memorial service in Statuary Hall. The speaker just talked about it. This is to honor the members who we've lost in the previous year. It's a fitting tribute to their public service, and I'm including in the congressional record the names of all of the members that we've honored in Statuary Hall this past September. And for them and for Jim Colby, and I'm asking that you in the chamber and any visitors in the gallery to please stand if you're able so that we can show our respect to these members with a moment of silence. Thank you. So as we conclude, and as you can see, the FMC is an active and an impactful organization that empowers members to continue their service after leaving Congress. We are energized and we're having tremendous success for really three reasons. One is the outstanding work that our board and our staff have done to solidify our mission, to put in place achievable goals, and strategize how to best move FMC forward. The second reason is our amazing group of partners, and these are the corporations that donate to us by way of the Statesmanship Dinner, and because they believe in our purpose and recognize the positive impact we're having, that they have meant so much to FMC and to allowing us to achieve our purpose. You've heard of these entities. Connie mentioned them previously, and they've done so much, and we so appreciate all that they've done. But they believe in our capabilities, and they believe in giving us the opportunity to grow and to create long-lasting programming and allow us to do all of the things that we're able to do. So we thank them again. And the third and the most important reason for FMC's success is all of you, the former members of Congress who are my colleagues, who donate your time and your expertise and your wisdom and your leadership. And you do this by becoming dues-paying active members of FMC. And I hope that you retiring members have found the insight that we've shared today helpful. And we would hope that you would also consider becoming part of us and help us continue this mission. We'd love to connect with you in person, and I hope you'll join us immediately after this downstairs in H120. We'll have a reception, and we'd love to have you be part of that. I'd also like to thank our staff, Pete, who's here, and our staff members there. If you would all stand, please. And let's give them a round of applause. And Mr. Speaker, I now ask unanimous consent that the proceedings during the former members program be printed in the congressional record, and that all the members and former members who spoke during the proceedings have the privilege of revising and extending their remarks. Thank
Without
you all
objection.
very much.
Thank you, Mr. Payne. The chair again wishes to thank the former and retiring members of Congress of the House for their presence here today. And before ending these proceedings, the chair would like to invite those members, those former and retiring members who did not respond when the roll call was called, to give their names to the reading clerks for inclusion in the roll. Thank you, and on behalf of FMC, my sincere thanks to all congressional staff who are such a terrific resource and support to make today's presentation possible. Thank you, and look forward to seeing you at the reception. We're adjourned.